This is a movie I'm going to do on explaining the PHP hit counter. So first of all, let's take a look at how this application is set up on the web server. So in HTML, I have a folder called PHP hit counter. So I have an index, htaccess, and a database, a DB folder. So the index calls code in the DB folder. So let's take a look at the index right here. That's how that code is called from PHP. So this is the index page. Everything from line 1 to 10 is HTML. Line 11 to 17 is PHP. Everything from line 23 and so actually there's PHP info right there. I don't know what's going on with that. Anyway, so what this does is in the PHP, I start a session, application presentation session, layer 5 of the OSI model, and I set a session variable called page name, and that is going to become index.main in this case. Then I call the DB PHP, the DB / push hits.php, and that's this right here. Okay, the way that this works is I include the password file. That's a password file. And I include an error code. And then what next thing that happens is I make a connection to the database. If this is not true, if there's no connection with a host name, username, and password, then I will say I cannot connect to the database. Okay, so now it doesn't work quite too well on this machine because I don't have MariaDB installed, but I have it on another machine. Anyway, then the next thing I do is I'm going to pass a variable for connection and the database name. Okay, then what happens is I'm going to get results. Okay, in PHP, notice the $sign comes before the variable. If you start investigating PHP, you'll see that PHP will typecast and know the difference between integers and strings just based upon how you assign that code to the variable. So I'm going to get a results from a MySQLi query for the connection and get the current date. Let's go ahead and see if I can do that. Forgot the SSH. Sudo MySQL root -p. Okay, so now let's go ahead and I'm going to have to just do it this way. Select cur date. Select cur date. And have to end with a semicolon. There we go. That's today's date. So that's called SQL. This is my SQL command. I could do the same thing for time. Let's go ahead and see the time. Now, date and time are extremely important in servers because that's how we document traffic and get forensics on who's attacking the server or who is who is accessing code and stuff like that. So anyway, the next thing I do is I get a row, and I fetch the row, get the results, and all I want is the first row, and that's an array. A row will become an array. So this code returns an array, and I'm getting the 0 index of the array becomes the variable date. Now I do the same thing for time. Results, do a query, occur time, get the row, get the results, and the row sub 0 becomes the time. Okay, now what I do here, this is PHP, not SQL. I get the server remote address, the address of the person calling this page. That's string 1. String 2 is time. String 3 is date. Then I get the page name. Now remember, I sent page name from the index. I pass this variable through the web page. Push hits. Okay, and then this is a debug. This is a debug. I can comment that out. Basically, this is just a debug to show what's going on with string 1, date, and time. And then that should be like that. That's HTML. Okay, now this is the SQL query. Okay, query. Insert into streams.hit IP, ID, IP, time in, date in, page name. And now what happens is the first entity is the ID, and that has to be null because that's an auto increment entity. And I'll explain that later, I hope. And then I get the IP, the time in, the date in, and the page name. String 1, 2, 3, and 4. That all gets pushed. I echo that. That can eventually be commented out, and that gets echoed. That query gets a connection and queries to the database. Or I show the error. Show error. And that is the error command. That function here, show error, input error. Okay. So now let's go ahead and let's talk a little bit about the structure. I'm going to open up the SQL of the table, which I said I was going to talk about. Oh, don't want that. README. That's in the README. Okay, this is the table data. This is how I create the table. I'm going to copy this, make another table. Okay, and so basically I've got create table if not exist, name hits. This time I'll call it hits 3. And I have an ID, which is auto increment, IP, which is a character, varchar, rather than an integer, because IP would be an octet, 192.168.1. whatever. The IP, the time in, the date in, and the page name. Now my primary key is ID, which means there can only be one value for a result for that. Primary key is unique. The engine I use is MySQL, and default characters Latin, and auto increment will be set to 0. I can change that if I wish to be a different number. Let's go ahead and we're going to go to PHP myadmin. Oh, shoot. There we go. So let's go to the database stream. Let me go to SQL. I'm going to paste that table. It's number 3. Okay, so nothing's going to go to that table, but I just wanted to do it to show you what happens with MySQL, with PHPMyAdmin. It teaches you how SQL works. Let me see if I can do this also to show how I can debug inserting code. Insert ID is auto increment varchar 127.0.0.1 time in, and that's going to be 07. Date in is going to be 230612. Page name would be testing. Okay, it's testing. And if I click go, this shows the code needed to make an insertion. That is honestly very, very educational, very helpful. It's very, very, very helpful to show you just how you can format your code to work. So insert into hits ID, IP, time in, date in, page name, and the values. Null, of course, it's going to be auto increment, and that's what I typed in. And those are strings, so it doesn't matter the format. So let me go ahead and browse that, and you can see right here that's what I typed in. Okay, so let's do that. There we go with that. Okay, so now let's gonna go to 192.168.1.7. I'm just gonna hammer this a few times. Control R. Oh, now this is going to stream to that database, that user, and hits 2. Hit data. That's the data. This is what I just did. Let's go back. 15 times I hit it. Okay? So the number should add up. Okay, so now the next thing is, how do I get this? Okay, and what that is, that's in DB. Whoops. Let's go here to DB, PHP head counter, /DB. I have an index in there, so I get this code. This DB should be htaccess password protected. That would be the ethical thing to do. So other people cannot find out other people's IP addresses. So now let's go to the index. Okay, the index in the DB folder, all it does is I echo an IP text, then I echo my IP. I'm not sure why I did which one of these works. String 1. Oh, this one works. This one doesn't. I'll comment that out. But I'm not working off of the server. Just demo. So I'm going to echo the remote address. Then I call usage. Okay, what usage does is it includes the db.php, and then I make a connection, username, password, database stream. In this case it's stream 2. I make a connection, then I do my SQL, select star from stream hits. Let me demonstrate that after I go through the rest of the code. So I'm going to get the results from the SQL connection, the results, get my rows, and then what I did here, kind of did something redundant. I just did it again because what I'm doing here is I'm limiting it by 50. I'm limiting it by 50 elements, so I'm just not totally crashing the server. Okay, then I'm going to do the query. I'll echo the rows, and then I do a for loop. While rows is equal to MySQL fetch rows, as long as this is true, while that's true, I would do a for loop for I that equals 0. I is less than the number of field results. Then I do I++, then I echo the row. So this echoes the row. Number of fields would be the number of entities in the table. This is the number of rows. Okay, so now, then I do close the connection. So let's see if I can demonstrate that. I go like this. Okay, and I'm going to show databases. Use stream 2. Then I'm going to show tables. Then I'm going to select describe hits 2. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 entities. That's the fetch row. And then I'm going to select star from hits. That star means everything. Oh, hits 2. And there we go. There's my data. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice that you got the main index. So now let's go ahead and hit it a few more times. See how it kind of lags a little bit? Because I'm F5ing it. Press the up arrow. Notice it's way down at 150. So anyway, that is kind of explaining quite a bit of stuff. The main thing with this is a really good learning activity because it shows session variables, how to call a PHP page within a PHP page, how to push data to a database, including so we've got multiple languages: HTML, PHP, and SQL. There's a lot to do. I've been doing this since about 2001. And I've spent a tremendous amount of time studying this. Anyway, so thank you for watching, and hopefully that's made sense. Thank you.